This episode of the 46 of 46 podcast is sponsored by Crua Outdoors. Camp comfortably with the world's best insulated tents and outdoors gear. Check out their tents, sleeping bags, pads, and more at cruaoutdoors.com. That's CRUA outdoors.com. Crua Outdoors, the best night's sleep you'll have in the wild. It's 20 degrees out here, and day one of the Northville-Placid Trail is officially underway. We're coming up to the Aluska Lean-To, walking along the cold river, and it is raging today. We're here at the Noah John Rondo Hermitage, 2 miles out from Catlin Bay at Long Lake, climbing up towards the scenic viewpoint, and it is steep. We're walking between the Seward and Santanoni ranges right now. Well, it is a winter wonderland back here at Duck Hole. Crossing the suspension bridge over the Sacandaga River, it's a quiet, peaceful evening here at Spruce Lake number 3. Well, we woke up covered in 2 inches of snow here at the Kelly Point Lean-To. Passing the Cedar River flow, sunny day at Stevens Pond. We're building our campfire early here at Silver Lake to fight off the bugs. Wow. Dude, I have no idea how we're going to cross this swamp. Just walking down the road here in Piseco. Well, I guess it's time to take off the boots and cross the West Stony Creek. 1 mile to Lake Placid, 1 mile left to Northville. You're listening to the 46 of 46 podcast, the Northville-Placid Trail edition. The Northville-Placid Trail, day 2. Kelly Point to Cold River number 2. April 15th, 2020.
James. Hey, James. Wake up. Got like 2 inches of snow on you.
It was around 2 a.m. on Wednesday morning when I was awoken from my not great but not terrible sleep at the Kelly Point Lean-To number 1 by Josh telling me that we're covered in snow, only to open my groggy eyes and look out the lean-to to notice the whiteout happening in front of us when Josh turned on his headlamp. It was snowing like crazy. Great. So much for that 10% chance of precipitation, but such is life in the ADK. Our fire had burned out long ago, and Josh and I were sleeping with our feet towards the front of the lean-to, heads to the back. So we got up and brushed the snow off of our sleeping bags and out of the lean-to. And we now changed our positions to sleep parallel along the back to finish out the night, making it slightly harder for the snow to land on us for the rest of the night. A few hours later, we could hear the loons crying, which is exactly what you'd hope for sleeping on Long Lake. We woke up with the sun around 6:30 a.m. to a winter wonderland all around us. Although more like a winter nightmare if you ask me. Can it just ever be spring? Go away, winter. The entire woods around us and our campsite were covered in 2 inches of snow. Waking up and walking around the campsite in our Crocs was clearly out of the question. Nothing like waking up to immediately put on your still damp, wet, muddy, cold boots. And to make matters worse, I forgot to bring in my socks that I left drying by the campfire, so they were a wee bit frozen, you could say. Actually, they were just straight up frozen solid. After waking up, we quickly made breakfast. Josh had oatmeal, and I toasted, or more like purposely burned, a bagel in my pan with my camp stove. I will say, though, having that minimal crisp and burn on a hot-ish bagel instead of a non-toasted cold bagel was way better than expected. Much better than nothing. But then I slapped some peanut butter on it and called it breakfast. After we ate, we got dressed as quickly as we could, due to the cold and the snow. We filtered some water down at the lake, packed up our gear, and hit the trail here on day 2 of the Northville-Placid Trail. Destination, Duck Hole. Today's goal was to go the 19 miles to the Duck Hole Lean-To for the night, allowing for a nice light hike the following day, and because we wanted to stay at this popular secluded lean-to. Our route today would take us past Long Lake, over to Shattuck Clearing, along the Cold River, past the John Rondo Hermitage, and we'd walk right between the Seward and Santanoni ranges as we make our way towards Duck Hole. We were back in our beloved High Peaks Wilderness here on day 2 on the Northville-Placid Trail. We are here at the Kelly Point Lean-To number 2. It snowed last night, so we woke up with about an inch of snow on us in the lean-to. So that was great to deal with in the middle of the night. It's very cold. Today's day 2 on the Northville-Placid Trail. We are continuing north, and our goal today is to get to Duck's Hole. It is 16 miles away, which will be about 8 miles less than we did yesterday, so that should be pretty good. The sun is shining. It's a nice day here on Long Lake. It is very cold, but it's time to kick it off and get moving. Unlike when we arrived yesterday in the dry, colorful hardwood forest, we were now walking through a very white, winter-like, snow-covered hardwood forest. It was not what we were hoping for on this trip, but it is the cards we were dealt. And since we're no strangers to winter hiking, it wasn't the end of the world since the sun was supposed to come out today, and we hoped that maybe it would melt a lot of this snow later into the day. We walked back up the trail away from the lean-tos, past the old hotel foundation, and began hiking north towards Rodney Point Lean-To. So since it snowed last night, the woods and the trail are covered in snow. But that is April in the Adirondacks. Sometimes it's spring-like, sometimes it's still winter. Usually it's still pretty wintry. But we're walking along Long Lake for the first large portion of the day. The lake is to our left. Very blue sky, sun's out in a totally hardwood forest right now, following the abundance of blue Northville-Placid Trail trail markers. A bit of a slower pace to start the day as we warm up, but we'll be cranking throughout the day. Of course, we don't have to crank nearly as much as we did yesterday, which is nice. The woods next to Long Lake are filled with hardwood trees everywhere and huge spruce and pine trees as well peppered in. And there's also a ton of blowdown across the trail, so that's really the story of this Long Lake portion of the NPT. Hardwood forest, tons of blowdown. A little over a mile into the day, we came to the Rodney Point Lean-Tos. But as I mentioned in the last episode, these lean-tos are a good 50 yards or more away from the trail on the lake, so they're not right on the trail, and if you're navigating at night via headlamps, it would be very hard to find them since they're a little ways from the trail. So I continue to recommend if you're staying at these lean-tos, try to get there well before the sun goes down. We passed the Rodney Point Lean-Tos 1.3 miles into the day, and then passed the Plumley Lean-Tos 2.2 miles further. And there's also great views of Buck Mountain across the lake at this point into the day. Shortly after the Plumleys, the trail starts to leave Long Lake and begins making its way towards Shattuck Clearing, another 4.2 miles past the Plumleys. Walking along this nice snow-covered trail here. We have Buck Mountain to our left through the trees, looking very nice up in the blue sky. The Seward Range is directly in front of us. You can kind of see part of it through some of the trees. But we're about to approach private property here. You'll pass through some private property, so definitely make it a point to stay on the trail here to respect the private landowners. The last thing we need is to annoy the private landowners here on the trail. The white ground, completely covered in snow, made for some very wet hiking. However, the snow in the mid-20s temperatures certainly helped in some ways by freezing the muddy sections a bit, which made this part of the hike fast in some sections, but slower in others. Both of our boots were still wet, of course, from the previous day, and I also kept having a wardrobe malfunction with one of my gaiters. So after stopping to fix it twice, the third time the clip just wouldn't stay shut, and I eventually took it off and threw it in my backpack because it was pissing me off. So I continued wearing just the one gaiter. So from a fashion standpoint, my wardrobe was pretty solid today. I'm pretty sure the one gaiter look is going to become very popular here in the Adirondacks. A couple miles into the day, we've been in pretty much a hardwood open forest, and now we are approaching a very pine-covered forest. Looks very different now, all of a sudden. Nice and open as well. However, everything is huge pine trees. Huge spruce trees, hemlock. Oh, there's a little shed of some sort over here on the right. Almost looks like a little greenhouse hut. Interesting. The woods during this 4.2 mile stretch from Plumley to Shattuck Clearing changes quite often. Hardwoods here, then full evergreens there, then back to hardwoods, and so on, constantly changing along with the width of the trail. The snow certainly didn't change, though, sadly. Just crossing the river between two bogs, one on the left, grassy field bog. You can see through the trees at the end of the river, then one on the right. And the water is running between the two of them. On this episode of Between Two Bogs, we interview Josh, the Madman Beeless. And it was on this stretch where we were hiking, a lull in conversation, just both of us hiking along quietly in our morning thoughts, listening to the super annoying jet that was flying over us for the past 30 minutes, where we were suddenly hit with a boom. Josh and I both jumped out of our boots. A sonic boom from the jet. And if you've never heard a sonic boom, it's pretty alarming, especially when it comes out of nowhere. What's happening in those situations is the jet is breaking the sound barrier, causing a giant sonic boom. It's definitely going to make a person jump, and it was very alarming to hear when you're not expecting it. All right, we're approaching a sign, the first one of the day. We are 4.1 miles to Shattuck Clearing. Lean-to is this way in front of us. Catlin Bay Lean-to, 6.5 miles behind us. Long Lakes Village, 11 miles behind us. And Lake Placid is 28.8 miles away. And then 4.95 to the first Cold River Lean-to. All right, we are going to bang a right and carry on this snowy leaf-covered trail. Though the sun is shining, so it's not too bad. We did the map calculation last night at the lean-to, and we thought we only had a 16-mile day today, which, coming off of our 22-ish mile day yesterday, which included that dreaded climb up and over the scenic viewpoint, it felt like today would be a cakewalk. Ah, the Northville-Placid Trail certainly has a sense of humor, though, doesn't it? How dare we think it might be an easy day? But soon we were going to realize our calculation blunder. But we continued trekking along through the snow, winding and weaving our way through the white woods, and then we came to a 20-foot stretch that had melted from the sun hitting it just right. A sign of things to come, thankfully, a little foreshadowing on our day. It was as if the NPT was reaching out to say, "Hey, don't worry, dudes, the snow's going to melt this afternoon." Kind of. We decided it was time to stop for a swig and a snack when we came to a big log across the trail, which made for a perfect bench of sorts. And this point brought us through a lot of spruce trees and ferns and moss-covered woods, which was great. That tends to be my favorite look in the woods. Of course, the woods were covered in snow, but, what can you do? Walking over some big wooden footbridges here, plank bridges with giant logs, however you want to look at it, over a little swampy section with a couple of ponds on both sides of us, and some beaver dams, cattails. But we are almost at Shattuck Clearing. Thank God for these logs, otherwise this would be a hellish crossing. As we were approaching Shattuck Clearing, where we planned to eat lunch for the day, we started seeing an abundance of moose scat all over the trail. For miles, we kept seeing more and more, leading Josh and I to start saying to each other, "I need to like a moose on the NPT." It made us laugh in the moment and has since become an inside joke of sorts. Though it makes a lot of sense if you've hiked out here. We carried on and eventually made it to Shattuck Clearing just before noon. A little boggy area and small clearing, kind of a picnic spot. It was here where we learned of our mileage calculation blunder.
By 6, we got to make 2 miles an hour for the next.
Yeah. So we just got to Shattuck Clearing, the official Shattuck Clearing, and it turns out we miscalculated our day today. It's going to be a few more miles, but overall, it's fine. We are 0.7 away from Cold River Lean-to number 4, 0.8 from Lean-to number 3. The Seward Lean-to is 4 miles away. Oluska 6.2, and our destination of Duck Hole is now 12 miles from where we are, and Lake Placid is 24 miles. So we are now going to just book it best we can. Time to cruise. When we calculated our day's mileage the night before at the lean-to, we arrived at a mileage of 16 miles to Duck Hole. However, the sign here at Shattuck said it was another 12 miles to Duck Hole. We somehow miscalculated 3.5 miles. While 3.5 miles may not seem like much to some, It meant roughly another couple of hours of hiking, and it's no